Welcome to the Pure Property Podcast. Whether you are considering buying your first investment property or reaching property mogul status, we dissect the fundamentals through to large-scale property development and everything in between.
Good day, how you going? Phil Tarrant, co-host of the Pure Property Podcast with Paul Glossop back in the studio. Special guest today. We'll get to him in a moment, but hello, Paul.
Hello, Philip.
What's happening?
Well, mate, you delayed this podcast quite rudely without any form of notice.
I told you.
There was a rocket that was taking off and apparently orbiting the moon as we speak.
That's correct. I was giving some detailed commentary on the
no doubt you were.
2.
Just waiting.
Seeing I am a guy who knocks around the space sector a little
bit. Of course
bit.
You do.
Of course I do.
Of course you do. Got any real estate up there yet? You're looking at some early investment opportunities?
No, but speaking of real estate, what I did find the other week was my certificate for the land that I think I sent it through.
Remember
that land that I own in Scotland that makes me a laird. A laird. So I think I've got about either 100 square meters or something or other. You know, it's enough to pitch a tent, and I planted some trees on it.
Got some peat.
I do have some peat, mate. Peat.
Peat.
You need it. Peat, mate. You use that, you can fuel everything with it. Don't worry about the petrol crisis. Just peat.
See, look at you, just solving the world's energy problems.
No, but what I was talking about though was the very lackluster address to the nation of the Prime Minister yesterday.
It was a little bit insipid, wasn't it? It wasn't much. It wasn't much.
So it's just an Instagram post. It was like, mate, you could have just done that. You don't need to stop everything and tell everyone, like, come on, man. You do better than that. You've had your elbow moments. You've met him. I've met him. I actually saw him in Parliament House on the day that he got engaged.
A big day.
Yeah, I was just walking along and he walking through and said g'day. And
congrats, Albo.
Good for him. He's a property investor.
He is a property investor.
He's bought his gaff.
He has.
Up in on the Central Coast.
Bought and sold a few times over.
Yeah. He's just a guy trying to get by. Don't know what he thinks about negative gearing.
Well, we'll probably find out in a few weeks when the May budget is passed through.
Yeah, we can give some more commentary to that. I reckon where it started, maybe 2 months ago, and the rhetoric around it versus where it's going to end is going to be tempered quite a lot as a result of all these changes.
I think that's probably. I mean, there's always different things that happen, permutations from different events. But I think what's happened overseas and essentially what's happening locally over the last 6 weeks has probably shaped a few changes that were probably not part of the original script for this budget coming up.
Yeah. Anyway, that's not for our chat today. We have a guest in the studio. Well, not in the studio. They're zooming in. One of Australia's greatest lacrosse players. Stephen O'Keefe, Aussie cricketer.
One of the best.
One of the best. Hey, how you going, mate? Good to see you.
Oh, boy, I mean, the amount of money I've pumped through Paul's business, and it's taken 11 years to finally get a second bait on the show, so it's great. I'm living at Palm Beach on the Goldie, up here with the wife, recently got married, looking to start a family. Life's pretty good, guys. A little bit more grey hairs from all of us, I think, since the last time we looked at each other in the face of the podcast. But it's good to see both.
There's not much just for men being slid through the hair. We're all aging.
Much like your property portfolio, you let it age gracefully.
Yeah.
Right?
A decade.
It is a decade ago. I sat down with one of my old team doctors actually, and she sent me some scripts for like hair loss, and I didn't even ask her. She just said, well, I just kind of assumed you'd be needing it. So I feel like we're all hanging on pretty well. We've got hair to talk about. So a lot of things to be wise up.
So for those of you who don't know you, so we did a podcast about 10 years ago, and you're a lot of people would know you through your work you do in cricket. You've been part of the Aussie team. You've been in and around the professional cricket scene, I'd say, for 20 years, if I'm sort of pulling that number out. Sort of thereabouts.
Long time, Sock, you'd know. Yeah, probably 20 years, wouldn't it? Being a professional cricketer, technically.
Australia's most fine cricketer, I think. So there's a lot of tags that go with it. But, I met Paul when I was studying at uni, and I've been playing professionally from 20, but contract, when I say it's loosely used, your first contract I got from Cricket New South Wales was 12 grand, which was a lot, it felt like a lot of money, 20 years ago as a 21-year-old. Probably wasn't until I was about 26, 27 where it actually became like you could consider it a full-time job. Hence why I did some study got a teaching degree. So it looked a bit like playing cricket, doing a bit of school teaching. And then, as I got into my mid-20s, it kind of then took over as a full-time job, and then did it up until 2 years ago. So being very, very blessed. I know I come onto this show, where I've got a property journey to talk about, but I guess I know and don't underestimate the fact that it comes from a position of privilege, because I earned good money at a young age, which allowed me to do things. Just finished up with cricket now. Just one of those washed up old cricketers that doesn't know what to do on a Friday afternoon. So he's just hanging out for calls from friends, hopefully to get on podcasts and talk about the past. So
about the glory days,
which
is great. I guess one of the I sort of know of and spoken to a lot of professional sports people, as you have, who have gone down an accomplished sort of pathway through sport, and there's always this sort of two things running in parallel. It's about enjoying the game, whatever the game is. It's about making as much dough as you possibly can, but it's always thinking about life after sport. And there will be a time when you're either tapped out through injury, or you're tapped out because you're not as good as what you used to, or you're tapped out because you're just gone, I've had enough, I want to do something else, right? So can you give me some perspective, Steve, in relation to, you use Aussie cricketers in general. I don't want to go into specific people, but do most of them go through a journey, a pathway where life after cricket, they're set up because they've made some smart decisions while they're playing cricket financially? Are the guys and girls getting it right?
Look, I would like to think as a general rule they are, and particularly now with a lot of the money in franchise cricket, it's changed a lot from even when I started to when I finished. Now, there's guys who are 40, 41 who can still play Masters tournaments, which I'm still doing overseas, and 80 cents in the dollar comes from India. So basically, they fund world cricket, and the opportunities still, when they finish playing at 40, 41, now with T20 cricket evolving over the last 10 to 15 years, just gives players so many options. I was sacked at 35. Talking about the trials and tribulations of the cricket, I was sacked at 35. Didn't really see that coming, but T20 cricket still had time, and I was able to play for another 4 years after that. So, 15 years beforehand, T20 cricket hadn't even been heard of. It's a much shorter format. Countries around the world see the value in it because it brings in new bunch of fans. And I think most players these days really are looking at investments, whether it be in business, whether it be in property, themselves, like they're super keen on that. And I think the access to it through, social media, podcasts, and all sort of, has helped improve that landscape. My story is a little bit, as I said, a little bit different to what these young kids are now. But it's, I tend to find myself in a group of young players who I play cricket with, who talking about finances wasn't taboo. It was actually talked about a fair bit, and investing in property was something that we talked about openly. And that's what, personally got me engaged into property, was being able to have that openness and talking about it with your teammates, which helped in a sense, because looking after your life after a cricket is so really important. And I'm realising that now as a family man, your priorities change. And in the
80s and 90s, in the 80s and 90s, you'd be on the bus after the game drinking tins and stuff, and now is it just people dialed in with headphones in, listening to the property podcast, worrying about the next investment?
It's certainly, it is a different. Back in the 80s and 90s, you had scoreboard attendants getting paid more than players. There was a massive challenge, I think, for players. I asked some of the players who played in the 60s and 70s in Test cricket, what did Test cricket give you? And basically said, got them broke, got them poverty because they played for free. Certainly not the case these days. But I'd like, and there's also systems set up now in sport where they basically bank money for you. So if you play for 14, 15 years, they're putting away a retirement annuity pension for you, so you can't blow it all at once. I wish I had it in my hands when I'd retire, because the way that I felt was flicking the wife, buying a Lamborghini, and just jet setting into the sun and torching it all. They pay you this lump, small amounts over a 10 or 11 year period, so that you've got a bit of security, I guess, moving forward, which is healthy for the players and for, the game. They try and look after you after you finish sport, which is helpful as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So like a double superannuation type of thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's funny, because we've known each other for a long time, right? Like we knew each other through university, and then through all the years after that, and then we've worked together to buy investments over the years. But the older you get, the more you look back on certain people who've gone certain directions, and you start to realize that the habits they had when they were in their late teens, early 20s, mid 20s, it's not a coincidence that those same habits get them to where they end up being in their late 30s, mid 40s, even 50s and 60s. And they're not necessarily all the positive habits. They're obviously negative habits that can fold into what ends up eventuating into people's lives. But one thing that I remember about not just us as far as when we were at university, and you were probably one of maybe 3 or 4 cricketers we went to uni with who all ended up making a career out of cricket, and in some cases a very, very good career. The habits of what you had at that time, even with a cricket contract and a career that was ahead of you, that not necessarily was guaranteed, but you were probably at the point where you're like, I'm assured of something that's going to be more than just playing Division 1 on the weekends, is that the habits of spending less than you made, regardless of what it was, not the first contract, but the 3rd contract, the 5th contract, and when money started to become more than what you would otherwise be earning, or well beyond what you would be earning in a general 9-to-5 vocation, you still drove. I'm trying to think of the car. Was it a red Commodore? What was it? Am I off?
Yeah, it was. Mate, I've got a Black Mazda 6 that's 12 years old.
That was the upgrade, I'm pretty sure.
Mate, I went from the red Commodore and the engine blew up on that. I bought that off a mate who went missing after he sold it to me. So that makes sense. But yeah, like the most expensive thing, that'd be the most expensive thing I own. And it's probably worth about $4,500. Like I've never been a materialistic person. Like it's never interested me. And I think my foundations with my parents growing up in Richmond, in a fibro defence housing commission sort of house. I'd always been very appreciative or valued $1. It's not to say that I haven't had fun and enjoyed what I've done, but you're right. That sort of stuff I've learned from my parents, and over time you value the little things, and you also realise you don't need that much. I think I've never set the sights too high, but that's where property has always made sense to me from a young age. When I bought my first place, we won this tournament, and I got $100,000 given to me when we won this tournament in 2009, and the first thing I think of is, right, how do I just put this into a vehicle and put it away? Like I didn't think at first thing I didn't think about buying anything like for myself. I was just like, how do I invest this? Because I know in 10 to 15 years, looking at my parents and how hard they've had to work, how do I try and make this work for me? And that's, that still is my attitude today.
Yeah.
A lot of mistakes along the way, as I said, but their habits, I guess I just picked up at an early age. So you're quite right, and it's still with me today.
Yeah, there's some. I mean, Phil, you're the same. We joke about this a lot, right? Where we're all probably cut from a similar cloth in the sense that we grew up in a relatively modest household with nothing more than we needed, but effectively all the memories we have from childhood are the ones that I'd like my kids to have. There's nothing that I grew up with that I'm like, I don't want my kids to be exposed to any of that. I'm more than happy for them to see it all that I saw, because it shaped the good things and also gave me awareness of the things that could be not so good, because we all had choices that we probably made early in our lives that probably could have set us on different paths, no doubt, multiple times over.
But people are still really intrigued with some of the skills that I have when they find out. How do you know how to do that? And I go, just do it.
Don't ask those questions.
Mate, I've got no problem with the fuel cross, Mark, and siphon petrol.
The fact that you know how to turn fuel out of peat is also something else that might be questionable. But I think for me, that's the key, right? Like you set your sights regardless of where you're starting from. If you set your sights on why am I buying property, the property is there to give me security and to give me an annuity and also to give me awareness that I am anchoring myself to just giving me stability in life financially. And that was, when we had chats well and truly over a decade ago, Sock, that was your why at that time. And that was certainly our why, Phil, when we started investing, is that we weren't looking at it to say, hey, we want to upgrade to a Lamborghini, to your phrase there, Steve. But the fact of the matter is that that you're wanting to stack property in the correct times, the correct areas, for the reasons that I want to build a position that I don't want to have to be forced to do things I don't want to do or work beyond a point in time where I'm just not ready to do so.
Yeah, and that's the choice that you get to make, and those choices are going to be shaped by the circle of influence you have around you.
Massively.
And I was fortunate just to land in a sort of professional career where I was exposed to property investing.
Yeah.
And I've exploited that knowledge and that connectivity. So, but you're not constrained with that. That was just luck. But you're a cricket player. Your game is cricket. You train all the time, and then you're playing games, and you probably live and breathe, and you're immersed in that world like you wouldn't believe. So to actually get exposure outside of it, and I think you're fortunate, Steve, to have been knocked around some less skilled sports people who couldn't make a career out of it, so they had to do something else. So the fact that you knew Paul is quite lucky in some ways, because you got a chance to
what are you saying, Phil? I do bowl left arm leggies.
I can bowl left arm leggy.
Yeah, no, we all can.
Yeah,
just how well is the question. How well is the question?
I know. So I'm happy I chose property, mate. I could have been an Australian cricketer,
no doubt,
much like you.
No doubt. Oh, absolutely. It was the second choice. Property was the first choice.
Property was the first choice. But this exposure to outside of your norm, Steve, is a huge enabler, right?
Yeah, and I think, when I first got introduced to property as a vehicle, it was actually by a property spruiker that came into Cricket New South Wales, and it was meant to be a lecture around finance, and this guy came in selling houses out in Melton West, and
surprise,
all the things that now that you shouldn't be doing, and this guy's coming in saying, like the monorail guy from The Simpsons, like it's like you're just throwing money at him, just going, this should be illegal, how easy it is. But for me, that was the actual first point. I sort of won this money, and then this guy had come in a couple of weeks after.
Surprise.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's great timing. And you realise then it was a house and land package in Melton West cost $320,000. He was making 4% off that deal just by selling it. You're probably spending 50 or 60 grand over what the median price is in the area. And then when I went to sell it in 2019, the place had been built on, I hadn't done the soil test, so there was slab heaves. So the place was, the place was falling apart essentially. And I was lucky to get out of it even, 8 years later, what I paid for it, just because it was structurally unsound. All these lessons that you'd learn from the start. But I think sport also teaches you resilience through these moments as well. There's a lot of, trials and tribulations that I've had buying properties. But sport does put you in good stead. You're always under pressure. You're only as good as your contract says you are, which might in cricket terms only ever sign longer than 2-year deals. So I had to be, I had to be committed to sport so I could, keep financing property. I had to be very smart about the property that I chose, hence why I used, buyer's agents, used Paul, because I had to make sure that, I was trying to secure enough that I knew, right, this is okay. It didn't have to be the best property, just good enough to look after itself, that, in 2 to 3 years, if I finished playing cricket, I wasn't having to force sell anything. And I had the resilience in cricket to back myself and go, right, okay, let's make these decisions. We don't know how property's going to look in 5 or 6 years. I don't know how my sporting career is, but, I'm going to hit it with that mindset. And it's lucky to have paid off in some respects. But Paul, you sent me through a bunch of numbers about some of the properties that we bought in 2015. And I was only saying to you just before off air, I feel like, my biggest regrets with property is not necessarily what I haven't bought. It's more about, what I've sold over time. And, the most simplest basic strategy of just buy and hold and let the property do the heavy lifting for you. I'd be far richer, no doubt, having adopted that strategy. But, I realise I've also got a high risk profile. From property lent into property, investing and building, and I've enjoyed that part of it. So it went from just being this passive thing in the background as a vehicle for financial security personally into I actually really love seeing something grow, develop it from the ground, sell it, and the process of doing it. So I think that's probably been costly for me in some respects, but it's now become a passion of mine. So outside of cricket, as I said, property is now something that I want to do and continue to do until I'm 60 and 70. So we could be back here again in 15 years if we're all still alive.
We'll get AI to do a little bit of a what the next 10 years will make us all look like sitting around this same table. Maybe we'll put that as the holding image of this podcast.
Maybe. And Steve, okay to share some of those numbers?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we'll get into that in a moment. But Steve, can you give me a sense for did two things? And this is a message to we got a lot of professional sports people tune into to these podcasts because whether they're training, they're in the gym, pulling weights or whatever, or doing a run or whatever. Like they're dialed into this and around wealth creation. And I just want to caution these sports teams and players around where they get their advice from. And the same thing cascades out into other sorts of teams, and I'd throw the military. Military teams and sporting teams are quite similar at elite levels because there's a fair bit of downtime. They spend a lot of time together. There's lots of things that can distract them off the field or off the battlefield. Generally speaking, they spend their money on stuff that they shouldn't be spending their money on. But particularly with sporting teams, but it happens also in the military is that a lot of clubs, whether it's at Australian levels or club level, they'll go, we need to help our players out and get them sort of doing stuff. But the recommendations of the people they bring in to talk to you, often they're a sponsor, and we're giving a bit back, or it's some sort of senior player's mate, or it's like, one of the committee guys, business partners, buddy and stuff. So they're not necessarily always the right type of people. So you've got to be really, really discerning around this. Cops are the same. Like cops are like sports teams.
Oh, absolutely.
They're sort of really insular. They spend a lot of time together. They're just talking crap all the time.
Public servants, generally
public
speaking.
servants as well. They've just got time on their hands. So be careful how you go about doing that. So that's just a thing of caution. And Steve's story certainly there. There's less of it now, but just be careful with it. But Steve, what I want to get a sense for, you played cricket because you loved it, and you got really, really good at cricket, and you played at the highest levels that you can play cricket in. Did you ever sort of sit there on the pitch, and sort of connect what you're doing for your job, as in, I've got to get a wicket, or I've got to do this because I know that's going to keep me in the game, so I can still make wealth by investing in property. Did those two ever sort of link up together where it got beyond the fact that you wanted to win for the purpose of winning versus keeping yourself current so you can continue to drive forward personally?
That's a good question because, it changed over time. When I was playing cricket, I would have happily told you would have played for nothing and been a school teacher. Then as I earned a bit more money and played a bit more, I realised, okay, well, this is a way to secure financial freedom, but while still really loving the game. And then I reckon I fell out of love with the game probably early 30s. Like it started to turn into a job, and and that's say 32, and I still played till I was 39, nearly 40. So 8 years, and then at that time I was starting to go, right, okay, I just have to find a way to be able to continue to play sport and really focus hard on my investing. So I was playing sport to invest, whereas, in the first 15 years of playing cricket from a 5-year-old to a 27-year-old, it was all for the love of the game. I really did love it. But then it really did change. I was like, okay, well, I do have to hang on. Let's sign another contract. Yes, it's another year of pain, and, I have to go through all this rigmarole of warm-ups and pretending to care in team meetings and going out there and doing the rest of it. But I was like, okay, well, this is the easiest money I'm going to get. I've done all the hard work. You're just going to have to cop it. You're going to have to do it. And again, you look at your parents and you talk about public. Dad worked in the RAF for 45 years and mum was a nurse. And, the amount of times I'd come home kicking the can about work. And I had that always in the back of my head. It's like, this is the lowest hanging fruit you're going to get. And so just hang on for that extra year, hang on for that extra contract. I say that to kids now. So on the biggest, longest deal you possibly can, because it doesn't get any easier than this, even though you can't see it right now. So it certainly did. And as I said, I played for 5 or 6 years after falling out of love with cricket. I just saw it as a job and as a tool to help with property, and then property now becoming a mainstay in life, along with a few other things that I like to do, but that's the mainstay. But
so you get a wicket and go, yes, that's another deposit. Another wicket, another deposit.
it literally, like, it got to that point where, that would give me more satisfaction, buying a block of land than it would going out and winning a game of cricket, which is bizarre. But I don't think I was on my own. I think there are a lot of guys still playing now who just see it as the flip side. Property was the financial vehicle in the background that helped out, and then I just looked at cricket, sport, as my job was the financial vehicle that helped me out. The two passions almost switched over.
But that's okay, right?
Like,
hang on.
It's normal.
I think it's fair that that's the case.
Yeah,
right?
and I think, obviously, Steve's in the 0.001% who've played cricket at an ultra elite level, but for the most people who are listening to this, they have a job, they have an income, and for the most part, their job isn't necessarily what they love doing, but it is a means to an end. And as long as that means motivates the end, for me, that's the part sometimes which people struggle with in jobs. I think a lot of the time is that it doesn't actually give them purpose other than paying a mortgage and essentially going through the weekly grocery cycle, etc. Is that if there's a greater good for what you're doing, be it you're cleaving off a wedge to park that money into this, that's then going to get you to over there. Then people who actually go to work every day, not from a professional sport perspective, but have a 45 years in the RAF as Steve's dad as an example, if there was something that you're putting your money into which you knew was going to motivate you more, it does actually allow you to go to work with a little bit less begrudging of what you're doing for a vocation. And I think that's an important part for everyone who's listening, is that professional sports, look, it can last a week, it can last 20 years, but the reality is you do need to start thinking, what am I doing after this? And everyone's job is ideally, hopefully, somewhat similar. Whether you're just putting more money into your super to give you a better retirement and spending less than you actually make. I mean, all these lessons are very similar. And one thing that sort of just sparked my memory too, Steve, is that over the years, I mean, you mentioned that first big payday that came your way, there was a random property spruiker that you obviously saw what he promoted and thought, that's a great place for me to park my money with that off the plan property in Victoria and Melton. Over the years, I know from our conversations, you've also worked with a couple of other really good titans of our industry as they turn out now. So Rich Harvey as well as Margaret Lomas. I know you worked with them over the years as well, which is very fortunate in its own way, because I mean that was the beauty about I was probably there's a lot of luck, because earlier in the buyer's agency space there was a lot of sharks. There weren't too many good ones. And when I say good ones, I'm talking about people who actually worked in the space, who looked at the overall property market and were a lot more strategic in how and where. And I think that's part of your journey, is that by fortune or favour, you've ended up probably collecting a few decent people, and it's probably your radar's relatively decent as well, because I think you're like, well, I might have seen that before and I'm not interested. But the people you've worked with, and I know you were working with Margaret Lomas and from a mentoring side for a while there too, and that picked up a fair bit of info, and we worked with each other for years in building assets, and you were also still getting mentoring at the time too. So you still haven't just been like, I'm going to outsource this, I'll give people my money and I'll hope that the outcome's decent. You've been invested in the outcome, not just from a financial standpoint. But I think it comes down to
discipline, right? What I see with highly effective professional athletes or military people is discipline and routine, right?
Yeah.
And Margaret's, one of the sort of original big high profile property experts, and she was not a buyer's agent.
No.
She used to help people understand how to go about buying property. So having those two things running in parallel, do the discipline, the training with her, and then the tactical execution with you, it's got to put you in pretty good stead, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, we can delve into some of the numbers when we did start buying property, but I know over the years, I mean, we bought 4 properties together. We have worked on 4 properties together, but I think you obviously bought property in Melton. I think there was property in Whyalla. There was property in Mudgee from memory. There was one other property in Brisbane.
All over it.
But,
Lennox Head.
There's Lennox Head. There was
Lennox Head. Have you still got Lennox Head?
No, but that was a development.
No.
Okay.
But again, I mean, it's funny. You mentioned some good, and we'll go over some of those numbers, which are quite alarming, because I don't look backwards. I'm all very forward thinking. I look backwards to learn, but certainly don't look back. It's hard looking at some of these numbers of properties that we've sold that, we helped bought. But I remember I did a property course with Margaret Lomas through Destiny Property, and it basically gave you the foundations and the tools. And I guess the more you realise you knew, the more you realise you didn't know. And I was never afraid to go, reach out to an expert like Paul and say, right, I think I know the area where I want to go, but I really need you to pinpoint it. And that was in 2015. We bought some properties in Brisbane. they didn't do a lot for a whole bunch of time, just sat there ticking over, looking after themselves, basically securing themselves so we didn't have to worry about them, until things started moving north, which I had faith in. And also, in 2020, buying some property in Lennox Heads, it was just before COVID had hit, and we'd signed the contract and COVID hit in March or whenever it was. And we had the opportunity to rescind the contract on it. And I guess just most people were rescinding on these, we're buying blocks of land, and most people were just handing them back in, just saying, no, the world's going to end. And I was with another guy, and we had 3 blocks of land. We just said, no, we're just going to, let's just hold it. It could go north, could go south, but all I know about property, all of the things I've been taught, the things you listen to Margaret Lomas about, the things you surround yourself with, you just hold the line in this sort of sense. And it had the adverse effects. COVID hit and property, everyone thought it was going to go tank. It just shot completely the other way. And we were lucky in that sense, but also that luck came through about building some foundations of belief and study and surrounding yourself with experts and reading. And it comes down to those small decisions of, okay, we've got 3 blocks of land here in Lennox Head. We can hand them in and hide and wait and hope, or do what most people weren't doing, and that was buying them. So we went from sort of having 1, and then 2 more came up, and we're like, should we buy them? Because people had handed them back in. He said, yeah, look, put it down and deposit. And I guess that helped shape as well. Again, as you were saying before, Phil, discipline, understanding, when you're under pressure, are you acting emotionally or based on facts, understanding how your body reacts when you see and hear all these things. We're seeing it right now, aren't we, with the oil crisis, and it almost feels like daily people are trying to punch numbers and things into your face. And I never had a short-term view. It was always long-term, 7 or 8 years down the track. I'm like, this is all just sort of white noise we're hearing at the moment. Long-term, I know this will work. And it has so far.
Are you playing any cricket at all now, Steve? Are you completely...
Yeah, I still play some Masters cricket over in... I had a really small career. I only played a few games for Australia, and I thought, maybe I could have had it. And I went over and I played not so long ago in India. Sachin Tendulkar was opening the batting in this tournament. Yuvraj Singh was playing, and I thought, right, here's my opportunity. I felt like I should have played a lot more. And then Yuvraj Singh hit me for 4 sixes in 1 over in India in front of 30,000. Went, yeah, that's it. I know enough now to know that I was never going to be good enough at the international level for long enough. But a 55-year-old bloke can come out and still smack you into the stands. I was like, yeah,
I would love that.
Absolutely.
But so you're still getting a check out of it though. So you still got a day job.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. I played with the guys like Sean Marsh, Shane Watson was the captain. Name dropping blokes here, but they still can't believe themselves at their age and our age. Like, how are we still getting a check out of playing cricket? Like, it's absurd. So along with my wedding where I had to lose weight and jumped on mum's Ozempic pen, I realised I've got to keep myself in decent shape because these little opportunities turn up. And as much as I dread and resent playing cricket, again, to me, it looks like, okay, well, we can add that to a pool of funds of which then I can go and have a look at the next investment or tool, and that's how I view it. So, yeah, still playing, still embarrassing myself as a 41-year-old. Again, if someone's stupid enough to pay me to keep playing cricket, I'll take that every day of the week.
There we go. This is cool. And we're getting some numbers, but I do need to thank you, though, because during the COVID pandemic, I think we were using his helmet when we were throwing pies down to the nets.
We definitely were. I think I do have a bag of washed out cricket gear that you might have lent me, or
it was actually
an
Australian helmet.
It was an Australian helmet. I'm pretty sure I tried to hit the badge a few times when you were in the nets unsuccessfully. I got the thigh a few times. You didn't have any thigh guard on. That was good times.
Tender.
There was a good few months there. That were the good times of COVID. I think everyone has their memories of that 2020 time where you had your 5K bubble or your 10K bubble, depending on what state or city you lived in. I can remember some of the best times of my kids that was because you were forced to just be like, you know what? It's old school. Yeah. We just hang out with the people we can hang out with.
Well, they reckon where we are right now, it's just COVID without masks coming down. So they've gone. I think the old PM's come out yesterday.
Yeah. Shut the borders.
Enjoy your Easters. Don't use too much petty.
Yeah.
But I reckon as soon as Easter's over, they didn't want to disrupt 2 things. They're going to be like, we're going to start rationing hard.
Yeah,
so
it seems that way.
Next week, I don't know when you listen to this. Maybe I'm completely wrong.
Well, I know that
like the cricket selectors choosing this bloke still for games, but
there's problems there. There's bigger problems in the world that when you see that stuff happening. But I did see, speaking of problems in the world and leading to Easter, I saw a Cadbury egg rabbit on the shelf. I was looking to buy some
20% more.
I was looking to buy, and to be fair, I don't look at Easter eggs more than once a year, and typically it's when I'm doing Easter egg hunt for the kids. But I went to grab one off the shelf, and not light. Typically, well, no, it was the same size. Everyone who knows it, the old rabbit, it's typically, I don't know, what's that, 10 inches tall and sits there and it's colourful, etc. And there's 1,000 of them lying on the shelves, and you grab a couple and a few other small eggs, etc. The price of that thing really, for lack of a better term, hit me for six. $13 for a hollow small rabbit. I couldn't remember. In my mind, I literally had my hand on it. I took my hand off, and I just had to go back and close my eyes. What did these used to sell for? Because I don't know anyone who looks at that and thinks, I'll get 6 of those, please.
Well, like most things, I have a lot of unnecessary information in my head.
Oh, here we go.
Reason. So cocoa prices.
30%.
Cocoa prices spiked rapidly, and they topped out in 2024. Right. And they've
it's 2026, Philip.
I know. So that's where they just went.
And they haven't gone back.
Rising 20% increase in cocoa prices, so which sort of translates in eggs year on year for your Easter egg this year, 20%.
Right. I did see that.
So they reckon that cocoa prices come down, but they're just gonna say the same price. So.
Did you see that over in Europe? I think someone nicked a large. I think it was something in the vicinity of about 400,000 Kit Kat bars.
I saw that. Yeah,
there's
got a Kit Kat crisis.
There's a Kit Kat crisis of Europe. It's a great. Don't worry about the oil crisis. It's a Kit Kat crisis of Kazakhstan.
Anyway, everything's expensive these days.
Anyway,
so give us the numbers. What do you got for me?
Well, I guess I'm happy for you, Steve, to maybe walk through with the listeners to say, well, where did you start and where are you now? I guess to summarize what I'll summarize what we worked on with SOC back in 2015 and also in 2023 and sort of where those properties are now. And then maybe you can add some color to what you've done in between that too, Steve, in the sense that here's what I've done, here's what I've kept, here's what I've sold. And obviously selling wasn't necessarily just taking profit for setting the tone there. It was also, you were like, okay, I need to take some cash because I've got developments. That cash needed to filter into other things. Borrowing capacities changed depending on the cricket career and other things that went with that. But when we first caught up in 2015, there was a pile of funds. It wasn't equity that we were using at the time. So it was cash, and you had cash deposits from memory at the time. And I think virtue of where we're going back, I think we might have had a pool of funds of 120, 150K, somewhere in there or thereabouts. And I'm ballparking there, but I think it was around about there. So we set a strategy then to say, exactly to your point, it was more, hey, we want to buy for realistically a 5-10 year plan here. It can't cost us a dramatic amount to hold these properties. So we're happy to be a little bit patient in holding these for the duration to get growth. But the intention of being somewhere close to cash flow neutral was because of the nature of what you were earning as an income. You're like, well, I can't have these highly negatively geared properties because it's just too risky the way your life is lived. So it ended up being, at the time, we were very early stages of Brizzy, and west, predominantly west in the early stages, then moved over to North Brisbane. But I think we ended up buying 3 properties in relatively short succession between parts of Ipswich and parts of Springfield or Logan area as well. And that was, I think, Raceview, Marsden and Kingston. And I think the prices were all around that 270, 280, 290 purchase prices. They were all freestanding houses. Freestanding houses. I think the Raceview property in Ipswich was a low set brick and tile 10-year-old, and the other 2 properties, actually I think Marsden was similar, and then Kingston was a bit more of a larger block, double fronted, potential for granny flat, which ended up being built. And I think over the time, so we spent, let's say, just short of 900K on 3 separate assets, 20% deposit, assuming 150K tipping into those. It was circa, that was the price then. Fast forwarding 11 years, and I know you don't hold all of those properties now, but the cash on cash return was worked out to be about 32% year on year compounded. The total equity return is almost 3 times as far as what those properties were bought for and what they're worth now. In 2023, I was approached by Steve again to more so look for a dual lock site. And this was after a bit of success with Lennox Head and doing a few different developments there and taking those from raw blocks of land to taking them to different stages and selling, etc. And there was at the time where the Gold Coast was probably, I would say, halfway through a growth cycle. It wasn't necessarily early stages, but it certainly was relatively hot. Now, there was a few strips, particularly in Palm Beach, which was where you had a bit of an interest, not just from development, but also from lifestyle. And we ended up buying a block in Palm Beach, a couple of blocks from the ocean.
Where's Palm Beach? South of Broad Beach. Is it?
Yeah, south. Yeah,
south. Yeah. I was going to say my geography of that back and forth.
Kira's been going off.
It has been.
Yeah.
The whole coast has been. Yeah. But I think we ended up paying, that one was a much higher price with the intention of knockdown duplex. And I think we paid 1.27, 1.28. The block itself would probably be worth, I would assume, if it was just as is and the same house on there now, maybe 1.8 to 1.9. Probably there or thereabouts.
I think probably a bit about 1.7. I think probably. Well, 2 doors down is the exact same house, and it just recently sold 1.7. So I think that probably
it's probably a 20% lift on that too. So I guess long story short, if those 4 properties doing nothing was about a 32% year-on-year return, or call it over 2.5 million return. But I'll hand it over to Steve now, because I think between then and before and after and during then, there's been a lot of different things that have happened as well, which will probably give some flavour to what we're talking about at the opening, which is things you do more of, things you do less of, things you potentially might do similar or about the same as well.
Yeah, I think they're all, as you said, sometimes it can be a hard look at those properties. As I said, my biggest regrets through property aren't necessarily what I didn't buy, it's what I sold. And there are different reasons for me during sport to sell them. But if I had my time again, buying and holding, the simplest strategy, if I was just purely looking at life for wealth creation, that's easily by far the simplest way to do it. Those properties would be looking after themselves. They would have made far more money than the developments that I've been into and continue to do. I think sport, realising that my income was coming a bit lower, they were coming off some interest-only loans. I wanted to put a bit of cash in the bank. I wanted to think about a family. So a few other variables came in, so that didn't force my decision. But maybe I took my eye off the ball in a sense of going, well, could I still hold them and let them sit and look after themselves and find other creative ways to still do my developments? It was just the easiest path. Sell down some assets, you have the cash, you can do these things. And knowing that cricket had a finale on it, I was thinking, right, I'm not going to have any income. So going to the bank and asking for loans is going to be extremely difficult. So I need to build this bank up, keep these lines of credits open, get a bit forward thinking before I finish cricket, so that when cricket did finish, no income, okay, barring your annuity, how do I then still continue on with property? And that took a bit of manoeuvring with my bank. I was lucky that I worked with the same bank manager for a long time at Bank of Queensland. It did help. But yeah, I think the prime example there, Paul, is like, if I just held the one at Palm Beach now that we bought in 2023, it would have gone up, say, $400,000. Like just doing nothing. Let it sit there, not even tenanted, just don't touch it. We've done a development on a duplex, with the rising cost of build price and whatever. We're basically selling one half. We're living in one half, so as a principal place of residence, but the other half will sell. What we'll sell it for, we'll basically break even on. So going through that rigmarole, doing all that work of building and, seeing this and thinking, I can turn one into two and split it. And, Gold Coast is booming and all the rest of it. You can still end up going backwards, and when the reason we did go backwards is it started becoming personal decisions. I didn't look at the place as an investment. I started looking at it personally. Okay, well, I'm going to live there, which has its merits as well. We enjoy where we're living because we're living in one half of it. But purely on as I said, a wealth creation scheme, it would have been far easier just to leave everything untouched and just be happy. I remember Margaret Lomas, that was her early on. That was her biggest theory. Property doesn't need to be the best one, just needs to be good enough, and just be happy to watch them slowly tick away at a couple of percent a year, and then boom, they'll go off and rents just slightly increase $5 to $10. She's like, find joy in just seeing that happen over and over and slowly. That is essentially what happened for a certain amount of time with some properties. But, looking back now, those properties we bought in Brisbane, in Marsden, in Kingston, in Raceview, if I still had them, bought at the same time. Another mate of mine who played cricket bought one in Raceview, and he rubs it in my face all the time.
He's still got that, Tim, does he? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Tim's still got it. And, and it was advice you were always saying at the time. It's like, it's just not pretty, it's not sexy, but it'll work. and that conviction. So they're probably the times I look back and go, wow, okay, could I have done that better? Yes. But I've also, as I said, it's created a new passion for me, because property developing, I wouldn't have been able to do if I'd held on to these properties, because all my equity would be locked up, and I wouldn't have had that pool of cash then to go and build a triplex and a duplex in Lennox Head and give that a go, which I've just loved. Even though I'll find that this property here, I'll go backwards on, I'm learning lessons on it. So I look at it as an education, and it's a paid education. So if I lose money on it, I'm looking at it as, well, I've learned a lesson here, and that's cost me X, to learn that lesson. So then when I move forward onto the next one, hopefully, it's just a mindset for mind. As I said, for me, building is now my passion, which I'll move forward with. Sporting careers are backwards. You earn all your income up front, and then you stops, and then you goes the other way, where I think for most mum and dad investors or people, it's the other way. You steadily increase your wage and growth, and things become maybe a little bit easier to hold as you go on further if you build a bit of a moat. So a little bit backwards, a lot of lessons learned. I think the effective message is, the simplest way, the easiest way isn't the sexiest, but it 100% is the most effective.
Yeah, and you hear it all the time, and this is old adage, and I certainly subscribe into it. I didn't like the lesson, but it was a good lesson. When you sit there and you're copying it at the same time, going, this sucks. This really, really sucks. Yeah. You're not happy with the situation, but once you sort of get through it, you go, I didn't like the lesson, but it was a good lesson.
Yeah, and they're typically the most valuable lessons, is the ones, because they stick to your mind. And if you were going to be asked that question, and to the next generation was saying, what would you do differently? You're like, well, it's pretty easy. Those lessons, the hard lessons you learn, they're the first ones you'll say. Look, this is why the old adage is buy property and wait. That is the adage. It's not complicated. Hurry up and wait. And the people who have been there and have the Margaret Lomas's of the world, that they're there with that advice, not because they make money out of it or make more money or less money for passing on that advice. It's because they genuinely have the experience of what works. There is just so many examples of that.
I've spoken to thousands of investors, and you get similar stories to Steve, where you start investing in property, you go, this is great. And it's like when you start, maybe having a flutter on the ponies or getting on the brickies laptop, right? You keep winning and winning and winning, and you go, wow, I'm really good at this property lark. Like, look at me, I'm doing this, that, and the other. And then often people make that pivot where they start developing. That's when things normally go wrong. Yeah. Like, most people don't do well in development. Most people don't do well in development.
And I can say firsthand as well, and Steve and I have talked about it. We talk, I reckon, probably every 6 months we'll just pick up the phone and have a random chat to each other about how's it all going, what's been going on, what's the wins, what's the losses, and we've talked about different developments since you were in Lennox, and I've been working on developments off and on pretty much for the last decade myself, and still am active in it. And I can definitely say that there's been some really good wins, but there's certainly been some others that aren't wins. They just simply aren't wins. They're lessons. Yeah. But as long as you don't go broke learning the lessons, and they're tax deductible.
Tax deductible lessons are the best lessons.
Tax deductible lessons are definitely the best lessons.
Heavy offset.
But if I didn't have a foundation of assets, which I have zero plan to do anything with, I would be white knuckling the whole way. And that's the key for me, is that I'm extremely comfortable taking chances in certain portions of the portfolio. And I think the SOC's position there is the same. Taking chances, knowing there's other things that were working. There's always a base that isn't necessarily going to get touched. And I think any property investors who are successful over a long period of time, they will typically have dabbled in little bits and pieces, whether it's a renovation, whether it's a granny flat, whether it's a subdivision, a duplex, a townhouse, and beyond. There is usually going to be a base of just good quality, boring lessons that they've learned and assets that they still hold to allow them to do it. And a lot of the time, that lesson is anchored in people's principal place of residence. And most people, if they look at what property's done best for them, it's usually the property they bought 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And it's very, very boring. And the lesson will be that when they're in their 50s and 60s and 70s, they say, I just wish I bought 4 of those and did nothing for the next 30 years, because I'd be in a far better position.
Don't meddle too much.
Don't meddle with what works. What's worked in the past will work in the future in property, as long as this supply-demand deficit remains. And I think that's probably one of the points that you point out there, Sock, is that the big thing that we are in, and the reason why the duplex you've built now potentially isn't going to have the same profit that you might have ventured into when you first bought the property. Is you didn't necessarily have airtight numbers on what it was going to cost. And yes, you've up-spec'd it because part of it is a home, and you'd learn a lesson maybe again to say, well, unless this is a home for us for the next 20 years, I've got to be a little bit more restrained into the materials I choose or the facades I end up or the pool finishes, whatever it looks like. But rising construction costs, they certainly have impacted the ability to make money in property in Australia, generally speaking, over the last 3 or 4 years. And that is what's going to put the continued lid on supply, which is just not going to change because it is extremely expensive to build just a basic
unless
house
the government actually
package.
does something about it. And this is the point as you go towards the budget, is that where the real tax reform needs to happen is how do you incentivise developers to build more property.
I've talked to.
This is really simple. Struggling developers like Stephen O'Keefe. One duplex at a time.
One duplex at a time. One tax deduction at a time.
Conscious of time. So let's not leave it 10 years.
No, absolutely. And I think for parting words, though, Steve, is that, I mean, there'd be no doubt hundreds, if not thousands of people here thinking, I'm in a similar position where I'm thinking about what the next step is, and I might be at a crossroads where I've got a few properties and I'm thinking, do I venture into that? If you were to give some real simple parting words to any property investors who have a 10 or a 20 or a 30-year horizon, and there might be just PAYG, there might be business owners, there might be professional athletes, where and what would you be passing on that advice if you were to simplify it into a paragraph response to someone who's like, okay, I need to make and I'm wanting to make some meaningful decisions in property?
Like I think it's simple, like anything with sport. Invest time to learn what you're getting into. And for me, property, I did the Destiny course, I outsourced friends, I spoke to people and the frontline builders. So I was always trying to educate myself. And then when it came to purchasing property, I was happy then even to go to an expert, go to someone like yourself to help me narrow it down. Like you'll know enough, but I think by the time you realise you've learned a bit about property, you need to surround yourself with smart people. And I mean, a great example of that, Paul, was buying this Palm Beach. I knew the street, I knew the area. I even pointed out the house to you, but I still came to you and said, I need an expert to get this deal done for me, and was happy to pay that fee. And we went from third on the list on that property to all the way to number one. You were able to then manufacture a relationship with the agent to get us past 2 other people in front of us, because the contract fell over at the top, to be able to then get us in front. And I wouldn't have been able to do that even with 15 years. So I guess it's not to be embarrassed or ashamed to go out and search. It's value. There's a lot of value in using experts. And we've said it enough, haven't we? That the simplest, most boring one is effective, with wealth creation. It is just buying and really, seeing these things just trickle along. It should give you joy and satisfaction. And I always, and probably the last point is, I always just built a moat. So I understood what I could, what the worst case scenario would look like for me in this situation, and can I handle it? And that was always, and if I walked into that knowing, right, done my education, I've got my experts, got my team, what's the worst case here? What does this look like if something falls back 20 or 30%? What does it look like not tenanted for 6 to 12 months? What does this look like if this development takes 6 months to 12 months longer? Is there a buffer there to do that? If I'm ticking all those boxes, then I'm happy to take that risk in that investment. That's probably the 3 main things that I look at every time I look at another place, which won't be long down the next time. I'll learn from all the other, idiot mistakes that I've made on this one, even as a 42-year-old, some really simple, basic mistakes, but I'll look at it as a lesson, and I won't be afraid to jump into the next one. A, it's a lot of fun, and B, I know it works. So, yeah. And is there something in there? Is there a tip in there somewhere for someone?
Sure.
If not,
the editing team figure that one out.
Yeah, luckily we've got professionals on our side that can work it out. But no, mate, well considered and sage counsel, Steve. It's good to see you, mate. It's good to hear things are going well and you're having a red hot crack, mate. And you found a happy home in property.
Yeah, no, we're recently married. We're looking to start a family with my beautiful wife, Lexi, and I couldn't be happier. I think the other thing that, that through my life's journey is I know what's enough for me and what I want to get to and a passive income, and that's enough. I don't need, as I said, the most expensive thing I own is my car, which the radio doesn't work. Had to make a bit of a selfish choice. The aircon or the radio, and I chose the aircon. So I haven't had a radio working in my car for about 6 years.
I thought Cricket Australia looked after its washed out players and sort of helped them out. Go and tap them up for a new transistor radio for you.
Mate, I bought it. I lived with Steve Smith for a couple of years, name dropping here, and he sold me his old Mazda. Again, the shrewd investor in me, he spent 47 on it, and then 2 years later he wanted to sell it because he wanted to buy an Audi. And I said, I'll give you 25. And he said, yep, no worries. I'm like, what?
Mate, tap him up for a new radio. He's got enough.
And now
he'd have a few second-hand cars.
He would do. Get an Apple AirPlayer in here. You can listen to podcasts, Smart Property Investment Show being one of them. No, but Steve, mate, good to see you, mate. Right. Let's stay connected. If you're ever up in the Goldie, I'm up there soon. Do you play pickleball? Are you a pickleball player? Are you into pickleball, Steve?
I really wanted to get into it. Hey, I've got a few friends who do. I'm actually just enjoying swimming at the moment. Cool. I've even filmed myself and put a bit on AI. So I'm just, I find a hobby and then I stick to it and then I get bored of it and on to the next one. But pickleball does interest me because I think I'd be quite good. Yeah, so should we organise a pickleball tournament?
I'm co-hosting a pickleball competition.
Well, there you go.
On the Gold Coast.
I'm pretty sure this is the only gratis opportunity you've got for soccer. I think his per diem is relatively high. So if you've got
it?
Yeah.
Do you want to play pickleball?
I'll come up. Are you going to fly me up there?
Well, you could record a podcast up there. You can cover your own fare.
Okay, sure. That sounds like a great alternative. Thank you.
Yeah, mate, you should go.
When is that?
When and where?
It's during the ARIC. It's during ARIC.
Oh, okay.
I'm co-hosting a pickleball competition.
Okay.
It's going to be good times, good vibes, good sounds.
Okay.
There'll be
send me an invite and I'll be there.
Yeah,
I'll be there.
I have to
get up the Goldie. So random.
Mate, we'll do that. Come on, we'll get you in. You must be. Do you know any sort of fancy tennis players? You must do.
Leighton Hewitt's up your way, wasn't
he?
Do
you know Leighton?
Yeah.
Ash Barty actually bought an apartment in Palm Beach, probably about a K up the road. The Grey building.
She'd be decent on the pickleball court. I think. You think she'd be half decent?
She'd be pretty handy.
Mate, it's a different game. It's a very different game of tennis, man. You sit there trying to be top spin, you don't need it.
All right, well, let's get that invite going. And,
all right, I'm going to do that.
That's the next one.
Come play this pickleball competition.
I don't want to play. I just want to listen to you host. That's going to be
interesting. All right,
But you can co-host then, and you can just give people grief. Your commentary work is on point, so I reckon he'd have a few good comments there. Drop them when he's ready.
You actually want to be the commentator. We can do live commentary.
There you go. All kinds of opportunities.
He approaches the kitchen.
Stay out of the kitchen.
Stay out of the kitchen. Look at that pickleball.
I'm happy to do it. I mean, I'd kill my own grandmother for the right price. So just let me know.
It's good. Thank you, Paul. So bit of a sense for how you work with your clients.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pretty good.
Yeah, well, I don't know. We were friends before property. We're friends during property. We'll be friends after property is finished. But a lot of my clients. It was funny. We've had another client on here who I was talking to yesterday, William Lung. He sent a photo of a large tuna that he just caught to one of my other buyers agency team who works with William a lot, and it sort of just led us to think, man, there's so many different conversations that end up happening over the years with our clients and our team, because we do catch up so often that we do end up becoming really intertwined in people's lives, which I love. I mean, talk about doing things for a long period of time. Negotiating and dealing with average agents, etc. I don't really love that, but working with good people over a long period of time to get good outcomes, that's a part of what I do.
It's actually transitioning, giving choice to people, right? It's pretty
absolutely
cool. As long as you get it right most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
My Holden Paul account, you would have known that I bought a property through Phil Property recently. It hasn't gone up in value yet.
Not yet. We measured it. Well, actually, I measured it the other day. It was up $12,000.
Oh, was it?
In the first 6 weeks. It's not even settled yet.
No, it settles in about a week's time.
There you go.
So I've made money while
you're sleeping.
What was your value? Was that a real estate valuation?
It was a core logic val.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was above what we got it under contract for, but obviously it hasn't hit the portals yet, so give me an auto val. So you can go to the bank and revalue it, get equity out. You couldn't, because it's under an SMSF, so you can't do anything. But I'm happy.
So it's useless to me.
Useless.
I'm going to have to wait around and sell it tax-free.
Sell it tax-free.
The tax man can't get it if you're in retirement.
Not yet. Not yet.
They're going to change things up. All right. Good. How do people find you guys?
purepropertyinvestment.com,
Okay.
1300 98 5428, and they can check out all our socials.
Yep.
Fast 50 Guide, if you haven't already downloaded that, that's just been
Hugely
launched.
popular.
We've got a lot of information that we've put out there, a lot of free information, so jump on purepropertyinvestment.com to grab that. And ultimately, if you do want to catch up and start the journey, similar to what we've discussed today, that's the best place to start.
There you go. Thank you. All right, good one. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. This is the Pure Property Podcast with Paul Glossop. We'll see you next time. Until then, bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property, or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.